Greetings, programs. This is Wretch, and welcome back to Vampire the Masquerade Sins of the Sires. And we are about to start Chapter 4, guys. Chapter 3 was actually fairly short. It involved Dorian talking to a kid in the hospital, kind of needing to make a choice whether to consider him a liability that needed to disappear, or just convincing him that everything that he saw with the police raid and everything was, just his imagination or a really bad dream. And I think we did okay, all things considered, and now we're about to start. Oh yeah, we also went ahead and saved the priest that we met at the beginning of the game too. But now we are rocking out Chapter 4, Under the Acropolis. Let's see how long this one is. Before you set out, Markos finally decides he needs to stop being suspenseful and reveals that you are all invited to Pisistratos Haven, where the prince will hear your testimonies about the events at Exarchia. You've never been to Pisistratos Palace under the Acropolis, but you've heard about it. The secret hollow carved ages ago into the hill of Ares, the white rock that once hosted the Areopagus or Pagus court, where murderers and religious offenders stood trial, where Ares himself was tried by the gods for killing Poseidon's son. On the way there, Markos seems nervous, an emotion that you've seen so rarely in him before. It rattles Persa, whose face appears even more gaunt than usual. For all you've heard about Pisistratos Palace, nothing has prepared you for the actual thing. The vastness of it, the endless row of stone columns that support the roof, statues populating every nook of the space. The walls behind are plastered and covered with bright frescoes, Minoan papyri, leaping dolphins, a prince holding lilies in one hand, on the other a griffin on a leash. On the opposite wall, Persephone is being carried to the underworld by Hades, watched over by Hermes, guide to the souls. Shift, thank you very much for that follow. Missing an R there, sir. Next, the Furies hound Orestes for the murder of his mother, and Dionysus, the twice-fathered, is being nursed by a nymph right after he was birthed from Zeus's torn open thigh. New account? Awesome. Well, welcome. This is it, Persa says. The heart of the city, where the magic happens. I have so little need for magic. I just want to come out of here in one piece. Slowly, you realize some of what you thought were statues and paintings are actually people. Your mind registers them as if emerging from the background, one by one. At the far end of the room, Pisistratos. You're a little taken aback by how young he looks. Oh, look at him with the wreaths in his hair. A vision appears in your mind then, of Pisistratos in a room with stone walls, sitting at a desk, a quill in hand. There's something wrong with the image, and soon you realize what it is. The young man's face is drenched in sunlight. It comes in through the window, shockingly bright. It brushes his cheek, illuminating his skin. He turns toward the window as if watching someone there, outside, under the sun, and smiles. A moment later, the image is gone. Another Pisistratos is sitting across the room now, and there's so little left of that sun-kissed boy. Going by what you've heard about him, you might have expected the prince to wear some kind of ancient Greek-style tunic and sandals, but the person sitting on the simple throne of carved stone is a 21st century man in a black turtleneck, handsome enough to be on the cover of a men's magazine. Clear, shaved face with sharp angles and smooth skin. An air of authority in the way he sits. Perfect dark hair. Strong eyebrows. Dead eyes. Hey, Bart. He does wear a discreet golden wreath on his head, though, with delicate gold-plated oak leaves that tremble in the air when he moves. It must be modeled on the one found in the tomb of Philip II, Alexander the Great's father. You remember visiting that place once. The museum first, when you were a child. You remember the remains of the funerary pyre of the assassinated king, the tiny fragments of treasure and bone laid out in their separate glass cases under the tender light, the careful temperature. You remember also walking the long corridor that led to the tomb itself, running your hands over the hot stone, scorching sun on your head and the back of your neck, then entering the mount and descending into the dark, under the earth, feeling the weight of all that soil above you. That transition not kind at all and not merciful. You remember thinking of those ancient bones, buried alone in the dark for millennia, with nothing for company but that golden cold, and wondering, what does gold know of the passing of time? What does it know of loneliness? Standing next to Pisistratos is the man who can be none other than Amphitryon. Like I said, guys, I apologize for butchering this, but it's alright. We'll get through. The prince's favorite as well as his seneschal. Light-haired, beard exquisitely groomed. The sides of his head are shaved, with a thicket of curly hair on top. Smart eyes, perfect nose, small mouth, made for keeping secrets. I can't help but remember what he did to that boy. The boy's ashen skin, his leg folded beneath him, lying in a pool of his own blood. And here is his murderer, upright, next to a prince who trusts him above everyone else. Around the time of the Greek Revolution, when Ottoman lines of supply and communication, it's pronounced how it's spelled, easy peasy. When Ottoman lines of supply and communication between Athens and Istanbul, not Constantinople, were cut off, Amphitryon helped Pisistratos destroy Suleiman, previous prince of Athens, and establish himself as the new prince soon after. Sophia Komneno, the venture child of Suleiman, helped too. She's not present now, though. Not even her role in overthrowing her own sire can cut through Pisistratos' dislike of women, it seems. Dio detaches themselves from a column and steps into the light. They're the only ones who welcome Markos, with a gloved hand to the cheek. They are incredibly tall and thin, the impression exaggerated by an impeccably tailored suit that makes their legs look even longer than they are. Their hair is short and slicked back, their face free of makeup except for the golden eyeliner that highlights their enormous eyes. Together with Pisistratos, they're probably the oldest vampires here. Vol is there too. Whatever moved him to leave his sewer must be important, as well as a small man with a complexion similar to Gore's and a long salt and pepper beard. Neither acknowledges you. Neptolamos? Pisistratos' youngest child, of course, is present as well. You recognize him because he's the Scythian. That's what Pisistratos, in his love for all things Greek, calls what in other parts of the world vampires call a sheriff, or a Scythian. We'll say Scythian. The name references Scythian archers, or probably Scythian, either way, that early police force that kept the order on behalf of the magistrates in classical Athens. It's Neoptolemos. Yeah, because the P is silent, I believe. Neoptolemos perches on the edge of a wooden clawfoot table. That, coupled with his long frame, cheekbones for days, and hunched shoulders, creates the impression of a very large bird of prey. You know little about him beyond the barest facts. He's serious, reluctantly violent, and performs the Scythian duties grudgingly. He thinks himself better suited to roles more refined than a glorified henchman's, and the fact that Scythian just sounds cooler, that the Scythian archers were actually public slaves doesn't help him like the role any better. Yeah, he is hunched over, isn't he? There are a couple of others that Markos greets with lips pressed into a thin line. The number, or perhaps the composition, of people in the room is clearly making him uncomfortable. This feels like Sunday dinner with my dysfunctional family. If your family were a bunch of bloodthirsty murderers, that is. The last of those summoned arrived, and the heavy doors of the hall are pulled shut, making the space feel like the inside of a very large tomb. You feel Markos shift next to you, and he even grunts a little. You turn, looking for the reason behind his discomfort, and realize Gore was the last to walk in, and the last you'd expect to see here. What is someone who's more or less openly opposed to those in power in the city, most of the people in the room, in other words, doing in the prince's house? Markos is clearly disturbed by Gore's presence. Your eyes meet Gore's for a moment. His lips tighten, but his expression is warm. Then an enormous guy squeezed into a too-tight suit takes Persa by the arm. "You, in that room," he says, pointing to a space carved into the side of the wall. It's little more than a closet. "What?" Persa protests. "I thought we were all invited here." The man holds up his hand. "You will be spoken to and given a chance to respond when necessary," he says, "but women are not allowed in the main hall." Ew. This is unacceptable. Respectively use my knowledge to argue the point, which is true. I mean, if all of these folks are so if like their pronouns and how they identify themselves is so important, then, you know, you kind of got to call them out for their hypocrisy, I would feel. So let's go ahead and, yeah, use the knowledge to argue the point. Large amounts of information you carry around in your head finally come in handy, for once. You recall and detail cases when women were admitted to places from which they were normally banned. Parliaments, sacred mountains, places of religious worship. Exceptions have been made before and can be made again, if the situation requires it, which you argue in a measured and respectable manner it now seems to do. Your points are well received, but ultimately rejected, because Pesistratos simply disagrees that Persa's presence is in any way necessary here. All he needs are her words, and they can be delivered by someone else just fine. However, you notice that Neotelamos has left his perch and is studying you from afar, his eyes sharp and penetrating. Something you did caught his attention. Persa glances at Markos, who gives her a barely perceptible nod. The muscles in her jaw tighten, but she does as she's told. The guy closes the door behind her, and you can see her pale face behind a grill in the wall. Pesistratos stands. He looks each person in the room in the eyes for a moment before he starts talking. "You've all heard the rumors about Aristovoros by now," he says. "That he's a returned antediluvian, intent on bringing about the end of the Masquerade, which would mean the end of us all. Whatever delusions he and his followers are nurturing, and no matter how powerful we are compared to kind, we simply lack the means and numbers to survive in the world without the Masquerade." Pesistratos pauses for a while, letting his words sink in. Then he continues. "I trust each and every one of you here tonight. Some of you may have your differences, your likes and dislikes, I know I do. But I trust that we all, even those of us who disagree on almost everything else," he glances at Gore, "agreed that Aristovoros must be stopped." Claps his hands together. "So, from now on, I wish you all put aside whatever micro-ambitions you may be nursing, whatever small-minded claims to power you may aspire to, and come to me with anything that might help thwart Aristovoros' plans. We must work together if we are to make it out of this long night with ourselves and everything we've worked so hard to build intact." Pesistratos stops talking, and for a little while, nothing in the hall moves. The echo of his last words hangs in perfect silence. It's Gores who breaks that silence. "And what about Amphitryon?" Amphitryon takes a step forward. "Excuse me," he says, his voice soft as silk. Gore ignores him and addresses his question to the prince. Oh yeah, he has the deep voice, doesn't he? "I said, what about Amphitryon? You keep blaming a rumor, a ghost, for the crimes that he commits? Crimes that endanger us all?" "What crimes?" Pesistratos asks. His voice sounds cold, but something under the calm surface is seething. "So, didn't know the exact nature of your job in Exarchia?" Gore tells him about Selim, the squad, what you had to do, No, what Markos had you do. He tells him of Amphitrion's relationship with the boy, which Pisistratos was also unaware of, apparently, and that he spread the rumors about Aristovaros to cover his own ass. The prince sits on his throne coolly. He does not look at his beloved. Instead, he turns to Markos. Is the Armenian telling the truth? He asks. Before Markos has the chance to reply, Gore laughs. You trust this weasel? He's only out for himself. He will tell you anything you want to hear if it suits him, as long as it suits him. Some of the others present mumble in agreement, but too quietly for you to be able to know who says what. Both Amphitryon and Markos have their fangs out at this point. The situation is about to get out of hand. Persa is trying to claw her way out of the closet. Blood in the room starts to run very hot, which for a room full of stone-cold undead people is about as bad as it gets. Ooh. How do we want to approach this, guys? We can try to calm spirits and call on reason, be united. Opportunity to make allies, defend Gore without insulting the prince, defend Gore at all cost, defend Markos, our mentor. Basically point out that they should all chill in front of the prince, or keep our mouth shut. Reason's the way to go? Yeah, the Malkavian calling for reason. I like that. I like that a lot. Let's go for it. Sorry for the drops, guys. The internet is being the internet today. Y'all know how it is with me. Whoop. Without hesitation, you raise your voice. You try to echo Pisistratos' earlier words, calling for unison in the face of threat, but it all sounds a little juvenile coming from you. The misguided, naive ramblings of a neonate who's in over his head. You're not convincing anyone. And Gore in particular seems disappointed in you for attempting diplomacy, when what he would have preferred for you is allyship and standing up for something. Neotalamos decides to diffuse the tension. That's quite enough, he says, from everyone. He glances at Gore, Amphitryon, and Markos in turn. We will resume our discussion after everyone has had a chance to get themselves under control. The prince loves the theater, so we put together a little surprise. Then he claps his hands together twice. A troop of 5 ghouls enter the room, masked, their pale faces and tragic mouths warped around silent screams. They perform Oedipus Rex. During the performance, you are discreetly told you are free to leave while Markos stays behind. Before you leave, though, the man with the salt and pepper beard approaches you. He is not a tall man, but you immediately know he's dangerous. It's neither a question nor a greeting, so you simply... Oh, excuse me. You are Dorian, he says. It's neither a question nor a greeting, so you simply nod to confirm. I am Capriel, he says. Gore, sire. I thought we should finally meet. Markos made sure you had the basic information about Gore and Capriel's relationship before you left for the meeting. Gore had settled in Athens a few years before Capriel did. He was a mortal, a respected scholar among his former fellow Armenians. Capriel achieved an understanding with Pisistratos. His presence would be kept secret. Banu Hakim were unwanted by the Camarilla at the time, and in return, he would quietly remove anyone the prince considered a threat, keeping the blood as payment for his trouble. He embraced Gore as a means of fitting in. It cost Gore his family. Capriel made him part of his work for Pisistratos, convinced him they were the same, wanted the same things, were trapped by the same craving for others' blood. It took decades for Gore to extricate himself from Capriel's influence, and Gore never forgave his sire. Finally, you ask, I've heard a lot about Markos' favorite child. I'm not his child. you say. His protege, then, Gabriel says. Not to be touched. Free to run around the city causing whatever trouble he wants. And what trouble have I caused? Meddling where you have no business to be. So why are you talking to me if I'm so bothersome? Gabriel shrugs. Gore seems to find you interesting, so I can't help but be intrigued. Curious what so many people see in you. And what do you see? Gabriel thinks about it for a few moments. A scared child who doesn't know his own worth, he says then. He waits for you to consider this. Am I right? Is he? Before you have a chance to respond, he comes closer and whispers into your ear. Take my advice, kid. Give up now. Leave the city. Get as far away from it as possible. As far away from Markos, from Aristovoros, from the prince as you can. He holds his gaze. And if you ever see me again, run. Then, as abruptly as he came up to you, he turns around and walks away. Yay for subtle threats. As you walk away from Pesistratos' palace and the strange meeting with Gabriel, scenes and verses from the ghoul's place still echo in your head. Oedipus on his chariot, facing the old man Laius, unaware that in killing his father he's fulfilling the prophecy that will be his doom. Then, Tiresias telling him, You yourself are the criminal you seek. Words as clear as speech can be, yet Oedipus cannot see their meaning. And then, when he does, finally inevitably, deciding he should no longer, that he should never again. Oracles upon oracles, and the more the heroes tried to escape them, the more they were snared. Free will pitted against predestination, all collapsing under their tragic flaws. What is it about Greeks and fate? In darkness interrupted by artificial sickly light, you walk. Hunger gnaws on your bones, a persistent, quiet pain that will splinter your sense of self if you let it go on for too long. It starts to drizzle, a misty rain that spins a thin, reflective sheen over the city. The streets are busy, cars speeding by, their lights blurring the world. Now, some privacy. You need to feed. The streets around the Acropolis are still crowded, the night young. You look for darkness, a safe corner, out-of-the-way nook to hide in. When you're confident you cannot be seen, you retrieve the stolen blood bag from your backpack and squeeze the dregs onto your tongue. It tastes vile, and it does nothing to slake your thirst. You stare at it, idly contemplating your options. Breaking into a hospital, begging Martha for some of that treated stuff, and that's about it. Such a pity, a voice behind you says. You turn around sharply, hastily stuff the blood bag into your pocket, and find Neoptolemus standing there staring at you. What is? You ask. Being kindred is not a dietary preference, he says. He seems irrationally angry, as if the mere thought of feeding on anything but blood springing forth from a person's open vein is offensive to him. You're not supposed to be feeding in this area in the first place, but even if you were, why do you insist on feeding from inferior blood? Do you think it makes you better than the rest of us? No, I don't. Just weaker. And it just makes me weaker. And why would anyone want to be weak? Neoptolemus asks. His expression loses any mirth that was there before, betraying it for the lie that it was. You should be a real predator, he says. What we are is not a curse. It's not something to be ashamed of or to punish oneself for. It's simply who we are. You sound like the kind of person who would follow Aristovoros. Some kind of vampire supremacist? Hardly, he says. I understand you never met your sire. Is that why you're so timid? Perhaps all you need is some proper encouragement. Perhaps I should bring a mortal here for you and ask you to drink. Be who you are. What would you do? You think I've got daddy issues, you ask. And why do you care what I do anyway? I suppose I like you. You look at him, his clear face, the intelligence in it, the hardness too. That's not all, is it? You ask. He smiles a predator's smile. You rather impressed me earlier. You stood up to the prince even though you knew it was a losing battle. So you like me because I'm foolish, rash, what? He approaches you then, so you can see each other clearly. We are more alike than you know, he says. A cryptic answer. No answer at all. I need allies. I think we're overdue for a change in leadership, and I can use someone like you. I'm not going to be diplomatic. I think this is probably a one and done kind of situation. What do you guys think? Kath says we should accept. I'm doing okay, Vito. How about yourself? I think there's a lot of potential here. Yeah, let's accept. Boop. Okay. You say, you have my support. Whatever I can do, I will. Good, Neotelemos replies. I will be counting on you when the time comes, and be certain that time is coming. When you arrive home, Persa greets you at the door. She looks mildly alarmed. You hear Markos' laugh then, followed by a voice you don't recognize. Is someone here? You ask Persa. Yes, she says. We have a visitor. What's been my favorite moment so far? Hey, Jason. I'm not sure. I liked the conversation in the it was a really short chapter, but I liked the last chapter's conversation with the kid who kind of witnessed everything, and you could have decided how you wanted to approach it, whether you wanted to make him disappear or kill him or kind of convince him otherwise, and you had different options. That's probably my favorite out so far. In the living room, Markos is standing across from a tall woman in a long dress. It's draped around her shoulders and form-fitting around her waist. The fabric shimmers every time she moves. It makes the whole thing look liquid, a woman wrapped in a gold fall. Her hair is dark, braided, and piled on top of her head in a way that looks vaguely old-fashioned. Her eyes are large, dark, and deep-set. They stop talking when you walk in. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, you say. Markos raises his hand. It's all right. Sophia was just leaving. Sophia Komneno. You know the name, of course. An heiress of the Komnenos dynasty, that together with the these names, Paleologus, ruled most of the Byzantine Empire. Her family was one of those that survived the fall of Constantinople and nurtured dreams of a return to old glory. Sophia's embrace by Suleiman, an Ottoman Ventru, about 300 years ago was part of the Ottoman effort to destroy such dreams by entangling these families in the Ottoman Empire's machine of power. But it turned out Sophia could hold a grudge. Suleiman had already assumed control of Athens when Dio's help before Sophia's embrace. Pisistratos became his advisor and then took advantage of the Greek Revolution in the 1820s, and, with Sophia's and Amphitrion's help, destroyed Suleiman and became the new Prince of Athens. Sophia expected to be given a role in court, seneschal perhaps, but Pisistratos, citing her womanly nature, shunned her. He couldn't banish her, though, not after what she had done for him. So she remains in Athens, bided her time. She built a coterie of spurned women and nurtured connections in every significant political faction in the Balkans. Now Sophia nods and kisses Markos on both cheeks. There's something regal in her demeanor. This is a woman who's used to power, having it, wielding it, claiming it. She lets herself out without affording you a single look. You turn to Markos. And what was that about? Sophia is furious at Pisistratos, he says. She wasn't invited to the meeting, of course. She thinks Pisistratos must go. What do you think? I don't care who's called Prince, as long as they let me and mine be. Is Sophia going to do something about Pisistratos? You ask. Markos stares at the wall, his mind far away. Yes, he says. Probably. And what are we going to do? Markos turns to you. I've learned to adapt, Dorian, he says, so that's what we're going to do. He scribbles something on a piece of paper and hands it to you. An address. What's this? You ask. A mortal named Savas lives there. He's a threat to us and our allies, so I need you to take care of him tonight. By take care of, you mean kill? What did he do? Markos looks away. He's an apostate of the Aristovaros cult. Doesn't that mean he'll have information we need? You ask. Markos hesitates. Yes, he says eventually, of course. Find out anything you can about Aristovaros from him. But then, you know what to do. This is very important. You understand? I keep any objections to myself. Markos keeps his eyes for you for a moment longer before nodding. He calls you a taxi, and minutes later, you're on your way. The taxi takes you to Marousse, one of the better neighborhoods in the city. It stops in front of a newly built block of flats. Savas's apartment is on the 5th floor. You make your way to the entrance and spot the name on the buzzer, but a voice crackles through the intercom before you have a chance to ring. Come on up, the voice says. The door buzzes open and the elevator's on the ground floor. Obviously, someone knows you're coming. Elevator go up! The apartment door is open a crack, and someone young and small peeking through. Dorian? They ask. Yes, you say. Are you Savas? The person laughs. They're nervous. No, I'm Natasha. She opens the door now and puts a hand on your arm. The gesture should feel overly familiar, but it doesn't. It's a message. It says, we're alike. Hand as cold as yours. A greeting among monsters. So where's Savas? You ask, and why are you here? Natasha checks the hallway and pulls you in, then closes the door behind you. I'm the one who called Markos. Savas is my friend. And how do you know Markos? That laugh again. It's nerves. Doesn't everyone? Are you in danger from Sabas? This time the laughter is real. All the nerves dissolved like sugar in hot water.
What? No, of course not. I told you, he's my friend.
Natasha shifts her weight and licks her lips, immediately nervous again.
He's just... I know he's involved in some shady shit and won't talk to me. I heard the name Aristovoros. I know he's a big deal, so I called Markos.
How hard did you try and get it out of him? Natasha scratches her arm and avoids your eyes.
I don't do that. I wouldn't. So I told someone I thought might.
She pauses.
And here you are.
And here I am. Natasha lets a few moments pass before speaking again, so you scan the place. Clean, orderly, large windows with blackout curtains, IKEA furniture everywhere. A normal place, a normal life, right? Nothing to suggest an obsession with an ancient vampire that threatens to end the world as you know it, as if a love for black and green velvet can function as a measure for one's affinity for dark things.
He's in the bedroom, Natasha tells you. I told him you'd be coming and that he needs to talk to you.
You should leave now. Natasha's eyes widen.
What? No, I'm not leaving him alone. She pauses. Why do you want me to leave?
You don't reply. You just make your way to Savas's bedroom and let yourself in. The man is sitting on the bed, in his clothes, his hands folded on his lap. He raises his eyes to meet yours when you walk in. He has that anemic look to him, what Persa calls blood doll cheek. The bruised crescents under his eyes, the pale lips, a face like ashes. For a moment, your mind blooms with flames and the smell of scorched flesh reaches your nostrils. You blink, and the vision's gone. Hi, Savas, you say, trying to keep your voice level, your gaze still and free of fire.
Hello,
he replies. How are you doing? You ask him, getting closer. Savas looks away, out the window, at the dark sky, the flickering city, and nothing beyond. He shakes his head and doesn't say anything. He looks bereft, you realize. It looks like he's grieving. I hear you've been keeping secrets from Natasha.
It's true, he replies, for her own good.
How so? He turns to you, his bruised eyes shiny, feverish.
Because I know what you'll do once you get what you want.
And what do I want?
Information, he says. What I've seen.
And what have you seen? He tells you, then. The cult includes both vampires and mortals who worship Aristovoros. Their goal is to make way for his return. None of his followers have ever seen him or know anything about his whereabouts. His will and words are relayed through an elderly vampire known only as the Mouth. Every 2 weeks, the mortals are taken to a different location for the sleep.
Wait, what's the sleep?
You interrupt.
They rotate us so you're never with the same group of people and you never know when it'll happen in advance, Savas replies. On the day of the sleep, you get a note that tells you where to be. Then a van picks you up, and you're given pills that put you in a deep sleep for at least 8 hours. Then you wake up in a warehouse lined with cots, or a dorm room or some such.
He pauses to rub his eyes and push a straight tuft of hair out of his face.
Once it was a school gym. I couldn't believe it.
And what happens while you sleep?
We were told Aristovoros would visit us while we slept and bless us with his kiss.
He blinks, and when he speaks again, it's with a broken voice.
He'd be feeding a god.
Pauses, then continues.
I used to dream about it. It didn't matter whether I was sleeping or I was wide awake. I dreamed of a fountain of blood sprouting from the statue of a dark angel, his wings spread so that I couldn't see anything else. Thought I'd feel a sense of peace and purpose that would overcome all of my fears and doubts.
But, you prompt him, ending his reminiscing.
I woke up during my last sleep,
Savas says. He looks away, his hand covering his mouth as if he's afraid to utter the words. What did you see?
Not Aristovoros. Only the mouth and some of his high-ranking members drinking from the sleeping people.
He pauses, bunches his shirt in his fist, and twists it.
They laughed about it.
You can imagine them. See them as Savas must have seen them. Hastily drawn caricatures feasting on the living and cackling.
Did they see you? No. I pretended I was asleep when they came for me. They had my blood. I felt I'd never felt it before, never been awake through it.
He stops and shudders. I don't see what all the fuss is about. Actually, ask him, does he miss it?
Do you miss it? Natasha helps,
he replies, and you don't need to ask what he means.
Did you meet through the cult?
You ask instead. Was she a follower too? You know she isn't, but better to make sure.
No,
Savas confirms.
We met many years ago when I was looking for reasons to stay alive. She seemed to understand me better than I did myself.
He pauses.
She didn't know I was involved with the cult until they kicked me out.
Then what happened? You asked, after the feeding you witnessed.
At first, I didn't know what to do. I kept to myself, but it was eating away at me. Why would the mouth keep the blood for himself? What would happen to Aristovaros and his plan if his closest disciple turned against him now? So after a while, I told someone. The person who drove the van, the next time it was my turn to sleep. He told me to take the pills and not stir the pot. Suggested there were larger things at stake. Things I wouldn't understand.
And? What did you do?
I took the pills,
Savas replies. He falls silent for a while. Nothing except his breathing can be heard in the room. There's more he has to say, but you know that pushing him now would only make him clam up. So help me understand something, you say, breaking the silence. Why did you get involved in the first place? Aristovoros was never an advocate for mortals. Why would you volunteer to feed something that wants to use you like a cow? Savas smiles, showing off his bloodless gums.
First of all, I'm vegan, so cows are safe with me, he says. But more importantly, a cow cannot consent, he continues. I can, and I did.
He looks you in the eyes again.
Haven't you ever done something you knew would hurt you? You must have, because you get something more important in return.
And what was that for you?
I was needed,
Savas replies.
Feels good to be so fundamentally needed, and to be needed by someone as powerful as him?
Beating a god.
To know that he cannot do without you,
Savas continues.
That you can withhold the things he needs most if you choose to? Who holds the power there?
Hey, King. Well, there are always others to feed our need. Savas gives you a tight-lipped smile.
You mean we are expendable, but so is everything and everyone else. We live in a universe of infinitely interchangeable parts. Everything can replace everything else, and eventually will.
You know, perhaps there's some comfort in that.
Yes, Savas agrees. If everything is fungible,
Never heard that used.
nothing can ever be out of place. There's no order to the disturbed, nothing to be repaired. The world is unbreakable.
And what if you suffer? Savas shrugs.
And so what if you suffer?
When they caught you, why did they just kick you out? Why didn't they kill you? You ask, pulling the discussion back on track.
I've asked myself the same question countless times, Savas replies. I told you I took the pills, but when I woke up, I wasn't in the usual dorm situation. I was alone, cold, left on a sidewalk in a part of the city I'd never been to before. I'd reached out to everyone I knew. Most people used fake names and weren't forthcoming with details from their lives, so there were not many I could contact, but nobody would talk to me. Eventually, I heard that Celine, one of the higher-ranking vampires close to the mouth, vouched for me.
Celine. Bull's child. Is she the reason you're still alive? Savas looks at you.
Am I? Still alive?
When you don't speak, he asks again.
They sent you, in the end, didn't they?
What? No. I actually have nothing to do with them.
But you're here to kill me anyway.
You seem to be rather calm about it.
Why shouldn't I be? I was fortunate enough to have him in my life, even for a little while. Not many people can say that.
Then he continues.
We are all figments of his imagination, creatures dreamed up by Aristovaros during his long, cold sleep.
He pauses.
Longer and colder than any we've ever known.
Dream beasts of a sleeping god. It's rather poetic. You can let him have that, can't you? Let him have his sleeping god. You nod. It's time. Kill him, make it quick, drain him, make an exception for him, have Natasha kill him, or spare him. Ooh. I've got to eat anyway, says Kath. Do you guys think we should drain him? You know, it is a waste not, want not thing. It's true. Anyone else have any opinions? I'm kind of down for that. You know what? We're going to go ahead and do that. Drain him. Make an exception for him. Whoop.
Come on,
You tell him, approaching the bed. He doesn't recoil from you. Instead, he asks to be allowed to lie down on the bed and pretend he's sleeping. You oblige. Before you bite down, you look at him. You promise yourself you will remember his face. When you finally sink your teeth into him, tears stream from his eyes, and a look of bliss spreads over his face. You barely registered the taste of his blood, coppery and warm, like any other beast's. When it's over, you pull away and wipe your mouth on the sheet, leaving behind a long streak of red. Savas lies perfect and still, as if lost forever in a dream. When you come out of the bedroom, you find Natasha standing in front of the couch, chewing on her fingers. She's worked her way through her nails and all the way down to the cuticles.
Is he dead?
she asks.
Yes,
you say, and then regard her. What are you going to do with her?
Are you going to be a problem for me?
I ask. She looks you in the eyes for a moment, her face expressionless. Then she spits out a piece of skin.
Of course not, she says. I'm not a fool to go against the great child of Markos.
Second time tonight someone calls you that.
Not his child.
You correct her, but she waves it away.
No, really?
Natasha asks and then shrugs.
Details, she says. Functionally, it's the same. Means I won't go against you, won't risk hurting you, will do any stupid thing you say.
Right. About that. I need you to take care of the body, you say. You've had your share of body disappearing. A person needs to know when to delegate. Natasha starts laughing then. Out loud, full-throated, holding your belly laughing. It sounds unhinged.
Of course you do,
she says between bursts of laughter.
Of course I will.
As you let yourself out, you notice the streaks of blood leaking from her eyes. What's our stats at? Dagger. We are completely satiated, guys! Woohoo! And we still have our humanity of 9. How? I don't know. Don't care. 61% cynic, 54% hard, 59% rebel, 62% self-serving. I like it. When you return home, you find Markos waiting for you. All good? He asks. Sounds tense. Yes, of course, you say. All good. You give him a summary of what you learned, including what happened to Savas in the end. Markos looks away, as if he's embarrassed for what he asked you to do. Then, the conversation clearly over, he retreats to his room. You go to your room and set up an old laptop on your bed. It takes only a brief internet search and you find what you're looking for. You press play. A video compilation of sunrises. The frame catches fire. A yellow sun climbs over low mountains. Impossible, golden, murderous. All right, guys. So that is the end of chapter 4. I like that one a lot better than chapter 3. I liked the conversation with Savas. It was kind of strange what was going on, but he had just pretty much accepted his fate and knew that he had kind of, I guess, burned bridges with everything. You know, with the cult and with the Camarilla, he knew that someone was going to come for him eventually. It's kind of like some of those mafia movies you see when the guy knows, he's like, you know, what's about to happen to him. But yeah, that should be fairly interesting to see what happens with this story, and if we get the chance to choose between multiple sides and figure it out. But yeah, definite improvement over the last chapter. It'll be interesting to see what chapter 5 has in store. The only thing I didn't like about chapter 3, Jason, is that it was very, very short. It was one of those things where if we didn't... because you have the conversation with the kid, and then you have a conversation with the lady, I believe. And then if you have if you choose to, you can choose to keep talking to them or not. And I chose not to because they were doing something vaguely masquerade breaking, and you had a choice to like befriend them or warn them, scorn them, or like something like that. And then there was another option to just kind of, you know what, let's just ignore this for right now because eventually it's going to become my problem. And I went with that, and then the chapter just ended very abruptly. So that's just one of those things. But it's okay. I'm still enjoying myself right now and hope that you guys are too. So there's something tragic about a vampire mourning the sunrise. It's interesting. I did not see... Yeah, that's what I meant, the blood analyst. Oh, that's right. Okay. I was trying to remember. I knew that I remember the blood analyst was transgender, but I was trying to remember which, like, which way, as crude as that terminology is. But yeah, it's just one of those things. The concept of a vampire just like watching YouTube videos of sunrises to remember what it's like, I actually really like that. I think that's a cool trope. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. We will go ahead and pick it up hopefully soon with chapter 5, Suffer the Childer. So if you guys haven't followed the Twitch channel, please do so. I try and stream on Tuesday, Thursday, and weekends with random times in between. And if you're watching the replay of this on YouTube, I have a link to the Twitch channel in the description below, a link to Vampire the Masquerade, Sins of the Sires, the Steam page, if you want to go ahead and have your own journey through the world of darkness, and also a link to my Extra Life page where I'm raising money for my local children's hospital via the Extra Life charity. So check out all of those links if you feel so inclined. Like, share, subscribe, you guys know the drill there. And we will see you next time. Later days, everyone.